Okay, Dean Legge, Josh, Kendall, Quentin Grant, as always, the Roundtable on DawgPost.com. Glad to have everyone listening again. It's the week of the SEC tournament. We're going to get into that in a few minutes, but right now, guys, we were all up there this week for the Georgia spring practice, which started earlier this week, actually. Josh, overall impressions just of the week?
Yeah, it's so hard for me to say, particularly when it's a week. You know, only half of it was in pads, and don't get to see a ton of it the day that it was open more. I think y'all saw more of it than I did, and even when I look at it this early on, I don't have a good feel for it. I mean, Rick seems pretty fired up about it. The people who know more about it than I do seem to be excited. They've got players. You know, when you watch them walk out there, you know they look good. When you watch them go through just the simplest stuff, they look good. Now, you know, that's half the battle, or maybe a little more. But you know, that's not the whole thing. I don't know that I'll get too excited about anything until fall.
Quentin?
A lot of talent.
In a second.
What now, Dean?
We're going to get into Caleb in a second, but what did you think
about it? Very talented. A very, very talented group. A lot of speed, a lot of quickness out on the field. Again, I saw them the last night before with you, before they went full pad. So. Right. I guess it's all relative, but I don't think there's any doubt that there's a lot of talent out on the field.
Yeah, and you know, if you're Mark Richt and that's who we're watching on the screen right now, you've got to be excited. This is certainly a talented group, but you know, you wonder how far these guys can go, and it's hard to tell that in spring football. One guy who will help them get where they need to go, Caleb King. And I guess you just kind of wonder, Josh, you did an article. Why don't you talk just about, you know, half a minute here on Caleb, what you got out of that when you did the article that's going to be on today or tomorrow, depending on when you listen to this on DawgPost?
You know, I think that they're quietly optimistic, and I think that they're quiet because, in a large measure, because Caleb is quiet, and he doesn't engender the same kind of talk that Noshawn did. I also wonder if, having gone through a year of Noshawn questions, 2 years of Noshawn questions a year before he ever played, if they've decided they're going to be a little more quiet. You know, they were not shy about talking about Noshawn before during his redshirt year last year, and I think, you know, it kind of created a hysteria, and maybe they've decided, you know, we're just going to keep quiet. You know, we're not going to be as gung-ho about this next guy. But I get the impression from all of their talk that they do really like him. They do think he can be really good. The players are the ones who I feel have been the most forthcoming, in that they said he kind of had a reputation as a finesse guy, almost as a guy who was a speedster and who was very talented, but you know, wouldn't necessarily stick his nose in the middle of it. And they were impressed right away that he did. So I think that that's a great sign for Georgia. I think that they're impressed with him. You know, we know what Noshawn can do. If they can have a 1-2 punch with Noshawn and a guy who's as productive or a little more productive than Thomas Brown was last year, you know, they're gonna have a heck of a thing going.
Yeah, I think he's powerful. He wasn't scared to stick his nose in there in those inside drills the other night. But something I guess that was very noticeable, he was working with the ones. The first team, Noshawn got the majority of the snaps, but
and that's was right in. They're keeping Noshawn out of almost everything.
Yeah, but even that night while we were watching, Noshawn got the majority of the snaps, and then they worked Caleb in there. Noshawn wants every snap.
Yeah,
is another thing. But you can tell Caleb's a bigger guy than what you thought he would be too.
Yeah, now that's exactly right.
That's what stood out to me is he's a big guy. And then watching the special teams drills, the gunner drills they were doing, boy, he's really quick too, and he moves well laterally. So I think you're going to see Caleb play a lot, and he's probably going to end up being that second back.
Oh yeah, he'll be the second back. I guess the question is, and you know, how much time will he really get back there? Speaking of younger guys getting their crack at it, as we're starting to watch here, Tavares King and some other guys on the screen. Tavares, Ben Jones, Richard Samuel. All right, Quentin, Tavares King, what do you think?
Oh, I liked him a lot. Number one, I think it's kind of exactly what I said from the beginning. I thought Tavares would be a real coachable kid. I think he's very smart. I think Tavares is going to play next year. Of course, I've been saying that since he signed with Georgia. Wouldn't be surprised to see him play more than an A.J. Green, because a guy like Tavares, I think, is going to block, and he's going to be able to learn the system. Plus, he's there. He's there right now, and that's going to make a big difference for him. And he's very, very talented. And I like Tavares. There were some things he did out there that I thought, I think he's instantly, you can tell he's very, very coachable. I think the coaches already like him. And it's just things you can tell. He's kind of got a knack, and I would be surprised if you don't see him on the field a lot next year.
We're seeing Richard Samuel now. His video has gone into, and Richard, I'll take this one. He had quite a practice up there at Georgia. I think it was on Friday. They like Richard, and I thought he'd be a linebacker. I'm not sure about that anymore. Josh, what do you think about Ben Jones? I know you don't sit there. You're not necessarily a talent evaluator. But in the next minute or so, what do you think they're thinking on Ben?
I haven't heard his name too much, which to me is not the kiss of death, but not a great sign. I mean, I feel like we all expected Ben to be the guy that they had penciled in as the starting center, and we won't know much until at least the first scrimmage. But Chris Davis was asked about him, and Chris is a pretty honest and forthright guy. And didn't indicate that Ben was making much of a move. Now that's like I say, the first week of practice, it's hard to ask a guy to do that. He's still got plenty of time. I haven't he's size. You'd always like to see him a little bigger, but at the center he can get away with that size. I think you're going to have to get through a scrimmage or two before we have any clue where they feel like Ben can help them.
We got less than 3 minutes to talk about Dennis Felton here. Josh, from what you can tell, if Georgia wins, loses, whatever, is he gone? If they lose Thursday night, is he certainly gone?
I'm hesitant to say certainly. I think probably. I think probably can mean anywhere from 51% to 80%. I think it's probably in the 60 or 65 range. If they lose Thursday, I'd be surprised if he was still the coach on Saturday afternoon.
Okay. So you think it would be within 48 hours?
Yes, that I feel good about saying. If they're going to make a move within 48 hours of the final game.
How was his demeanor after that game? I know that almost everyone in the mainstream had an article about it, as you did. Tell me what you saw. I mean, what was it? Vintage Dennis, or what are we talking about?
It was. I asked him all of those quotes, and this was 10 minutes probably of tape, which may not sound a lot, but when you think about somebody just talking straight at you for 10 minutes, it's a long time.
Who asked him the question?
It was two questions that I asked, and he clearly had, this is a subject that he's thought about, and anybody would in his situation, and clearly a subject that he's researched to feel like he can compare his program to what St. Bonaventure, St. John's, and Baylor went through, and has gone so far as to look up the numbers and to know that Georgia's won more games, and knows Georgia has won more conference games and all this. But it was very, I felt like it was a very professional. He handled it very professionally. He was not upset. He was not outwardly upset. You could tell he didn't like talking about it. But he kind of just had several points he wanted to make, and he just went down the list making them. And the last thing he said as he walked off was Bill Belichick got fired, and that to me came across as a little arrogant, like if they fire me, so what? I still know I'm a good coach. And maybe arrogance is not a bad thing. Maybe that's that may be exactly what you want. It's probably what Bill Belichick did, and it worked for him. And he's right. Bill Belichick did get fired. Maybe Dennis Felton would go somewhere else, and the situation would work out just right for him, or he would learn some things from this situation.
Less than 30 seconds, Quentin. Where are you with this whole thing? And we're going to go. Everyone else can hear about what we think about this after the YouTube break. But Quentin, you got about 20 seconds.
Well, number one is, I guess you're not sure where do they go if they do fire him. There's not a lot of great people out there. I guess the guy from VCU, Anthony Grant, comes to mind real quickly, but I'll be surprised if they don't at this point. But where do you go? And that's probably something that Damon Evans is dealing with right now.
All right, everyone, join us on DawgPost.com.